is to go off script, to improvise, freestyle, or act on instinct.
Hi, welcome to another episode with Ad Lib with Liv. I'm your host, Liv, and I have a really special guest with me here today, Kashi, coming straight from the Costa Rican jungle in Puerto Viejo, where I used to live and I miss dearly. Kashi, welcome.
Thank you. So good to be here.
The people who are just listening and can't see the video, tell us, set up the scene for us. Where are you?
Well, I have my jungle background, basically. So behind me, it's actually, I'm inside, but I look like I'm outside because that is the houses in the Caribbean, in Costa Rica. It's kind of like, you have three walls sometimes. So my living room is open. So there's beautiful greenery behind me.
Yeah, it looks like one of those AI backdrops that you can plug in, when you're sitting in your apartment with white walls. Nope, it's real.
It's real, baby. I'm the real deal.
We might see a sloth. We might see a toucan. Yeah.
Most likely you'll see my cat.
I hope so. What do you call your house, your space?
The Rose Temple.
The Rose Temple.
Actually, technically it's the Rose Temple Grove is the name that I gave it because there's a beautiful garden, but it gets shortened to the Rose Temple.
The Rose Temple sounds like a place every woman should visit at some point. I want my own rose garden. And I love that you are calling in from Costa Rica because this is where I used to live and this is how we connected, even though we've never met in person. But I feel like I know you so well because we've gotten to work together in a few different ways. And it just brings me back to those years that I had in the Caribbean, and you still call it home, right? It's been your home base for a few years.
Yeah, for 5 years, a little bit more than 5 years. I came in 2021, January. COVID refugee from London on the run from England. And I just stayed in this house as soon as I found it. It's funny you said that about every woman should come here, because as soon as I found it, when I came to view it, I was like, this is where I can do the women's work. I saw it from that first moment, was that this wasn't just a temple for me. This was supposed to be a haven for women, especially.
So Kashi, also known as Kundalini Rose, I think that's how people might recognize you online because that's your Instagram handle. But it's also, how would you what do you identify with? Kashi, Kundalini Rose. What are the differences between these two wonderful names?
Identity.
Who are you?
Well, basically Kashi. The short version is that the name Kashi was given to me. It wasn't my birth name, but my surname is Money. So Kashi evolved and emerged because my surname was Money. It was a nickname originally. And then when I came to Costa Rica and I just birthed my business, then I gave it the name Kundalini Rose. And then it all got a bit squashed together. And so somehow now mostly I'm known as Kashi Kundalini Rose professionally, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it also rolls off the tongue.
It does. It actually sounds like poetry. I reference you as Kashi, but online you're Kundalini Rose, which I love because if someone comes across your page, it's just an immediate invitation into who you are. That just carries so much good energy and curiosity. You are a teacher of Tantra and an embodiment mentor who guides women into profound transformations through one-on-one offerings, online courses, as well as hosting retreats around the world, including Egypt and Costa Rica. Your tantrahuasca retreat blends the medicine of ayahuasca, tantric practices, and intimate rituals to help women expand, reconnect, and reawaken their heart's purpose. You have also been a guide, a mentor, and a muse for me. I get to actually speak from experience through this conversation with you today, which I'm so excited for. So welcome. And I just want to talk a little bit about my personal experience with you and how we connected. So I was on a personal journey of looking to explore my own sensuality, which is something that comes really naturally for me. I'm connected to my senses and I have a lot of desire to express through my senses. And so I was looking for guidance, support, and the internet is flooded with voices and coaches and classes that you can take around connecting with your feminine divine and sensual embodiment and tantric energy and all these things that feel a little abstract, but had a resonance for me. So I wanted to know more, but I couldn't find the right person until I came across an offering where you were doing like a free live session with a group of people who are interested in discussing the topic of personal, sensual embodiment. And I was like, great, I'll drop in, love a free opportunity. And that was when I knew that I needed to connect with you and your work, because you come across so authentic, so true. You take your work so seriously, but you also have a playfulness and a lightness to you, which makes it accessible and makes it fun, because this process can be heavy, but I think you bring so much play to it. And that's one of my biggest takeaways, is you've taught me how to like play in my sensuality and also expand so deeply through it. So yeah, your work has honestly changed my life. I know this is an interview with you, but I'm going to talk a little bit more because I want to share my highlights that I took away from your course called Portal of Power,
I'm loving it.
It's just like praise.
Mm-hmm.
Portal of Power is a course that you've been teaching for how many years?
I think I created Portal of Power it was when I went to Egypt, because I filmed half of it in Egypt. So it would have been 2 years. It was 2024.
Okay, perfect. So I got in at the first year that you had started it.
First round, even.
Okay, that's special. I didn't realize that.
And the course had just been created. And I do remember you dropped into, I guess it was like some kind of masterclass, mistress class. And you came in, and that's the first time, I met you, basically, was like
Yes.
in that class. And then you came straight into the program. So I'm pretty sure that was the first ever round.
That's really cool that I got to be a part of that, because it truly was so transformational. A few of the highlights from the course that I really carry through to my day today are that I have learned to not be a victim of my circumstances, but I am in fact a creator of them. I learned about just taking personal responsibility, and that has changed every relationship that I have in my life, because I own how I showed up in those relationships instead of feeling like all these negative things happened to me, or the question, why me and poor me. And it really let me reframe where I was showing up in those dynamics, and how the negative things that happened were actually the initiations that I needed. And I also learned about how my sensuality and my passion is more than sexual desire and romance. It is the portal to my creative self. It's the blueprint for my dreams and my purpose. It's a big thing. It's serious. We have to take our sensuality and our sexuality serious as women. I need to listen. I need to move. I need to explore, and I need to surrender. And that's how I can transform my life. So easy, right? Just do those things every day. No, it's not easy. And that's why I found you, because I needed a guide, and you taught me how to step into my sensuality. Most young girls and women, we are not taught to tune in to that sensual side of ourselves. In fact, we're taught to hide it, or we're shown that our sensuality is seen through the male gaze, which is something to reframe. Truly, at 35 years old, I am now learning to reclaim my pleasure. So I'm learning that my sexuality is truly my own, and it starts from my own energy. And yeah, it was never meant to begin or end with penetration. It's actually the medicine that I make, that I channel, that I use to create, dream, transmute, and yes, come. So I want to open the floor to you now, and I want to talk about how you became the mentor that you are today. Like, how do you embody what you do? How are you able to teach women so authentically? How did you get to that point?
Well, I loved all of that. You're such a good student. You really took to it all like a duck to water, just like gave you wings. And it's beautiful that all of those pieces are still so present. And yeah, it's like in many ways, I'm also just a natural on this path. Like I discovered Tantra at around 16 years old. I started reading Osho's books. I was a total bookworm when I was younger. I still am, but I don't have as much time for it. And I discovered Osho's books and I devoured them. And then I had a lover who was actually an Osho sannyasin when I was about 22, my second love. And he introduced me to Tantra as a kind of like lived concept. It was all very blended with polyamory and free love and open relationship, which I learned was not my jam really ultimately, but it was quite an initiation. I guess that was the somatic initiation for me of like being with someone who practiced tantra and walked the tantric path and had, you know, initiation with a guru. And it was a big initiation for me. My biggest initiations have been through love and sexuality, you know, in the good and the hard sense, like the heartbreaks, as well as the deep love initiations, you know, that have been totally phenomenal and blissful, and then also completely excruciating on the other side. So that has really been, yeah, my greatest teacher. And I walked the path not with any intention to teach. You know, it was like, I mean, 20 years ago, we're talking about more than 20 years ago now, when I was with this lover of mine. And you know, I was like, Instagram didn't exist. I wasn't following people and going like, oh yeah, I can make some money out of this. I'll be a facilitator. I'll, you know, set up my brand. Like none of that was even remotely of interest. I was dedicated to being a hippie at that point. You know, I'd come out of university. I was so over education. I went to a really academic school, and I was just like, I literally took my shoes off for 7 years and traveled the world. And I was just spiritually hungry. I was, you know, I was an artist as well. I was a dancer. I was interested in expression. Sensuality was just a part of who I was. And I had a natural, I guess, lack of shame. So I found myself in lots of experiences and communities where we were just naked, you know, and it was just normalized. Actually, my dad was a nudist. So even when I was a little kid, I used to go on holiday with my family, and it was just, everyone was nude, and it was just normal. You know, it was France. So people weren't freaking out like America, maybe. It was just like,
yes, we will freak out.
I think I had this real, just like comfortable in my own skin thing about me. And I thought it was actually normal. And it took me a long time to realize that this is not the case for many, 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 many women and humans. No. So, you know, embodiment was always kind of a gift of mine. And at the same time, I was just walking the path of Tantra because it fulfilled me. It was like, it was always more of a remembrance. So when I was reading those books, when I was learning, it was less of a, oh, this is something new, and more of a validation of what I already knew inside me. And that's why I loved it so much, because it was so affirming and validating. Somebody's put it into words and put it in a book. Like, this is what I know in my soul. So, you know, that was the draw for me. And then I went deep in my spiritual awakening and in a sort of private tantric shamanic mentorship for many years. And that was probably some of my deepest initiations, priestess initiations, really like rude awakening. You know, it spanned my Saturn return, and it was tough. I was also like quite isolated during that period, intentionally, to do the deep inner work and reclamation of my power at a soul level. And so I think after all of that, when I came to Puerto Viejo, I mean, many things happened in between, but I'm going to put it in a nutshell. When I came here, I didn't have the intention to teach, to guide, to lead. I had no plan, because a lot of my life I live like a mystic, you know. I don't really have a plan ever. I'm really following the guidance. I'm really following the calling. Of course, I operate from the mind, but most of my life, I also had a natural ability to be heart-led, right? Which is why my greatest initiations happen through following my heart.
Yeah.
And so when I came here, it was suddenly like Kundalini Rose just birthed effortlessly. It felt like an orgasmic birth. And it felt like this land was so supportive to me bringing that work. So like I said, I found this house, and I just knew that I was meant to do workshops with women here. And then from that, it expanded online. And so there was a real threshold for me of like 15 years at least of doing the inner work, because it was my path, before I actually started to teach and lead and guide others.
I think that explains it so well, from me as a student and finding you in the massive ocean that is Instagram and the internet. You really like hold the truth within you, and it doesn't feel performative. It doesn't feel like you studied it and now you're reiterating that information. It feels true, like you have truly felt it yourself, and that's why you can teach it so effortlessly and with such knowing. And that is not the case for all guides and teachers. So I feel that story that you just told. I love that love is at the center of it all. One thing that came up while you were speaking is, what are some of the practices that you were doing to like really devote yourself to discovering yourself, to like what Kashi's practices are, and back in the day even, that like kept you, finding depth within yourself in your expression?
Yeah, it's a great question because the practices have evolved. And I went through I believe it was 7 years where I was dedicated yogini. Like I would do 90 minutes of yoga every morning. And if I didn't do at least an hour of yoga, I felt off. So I was so devoted and dedicated to that practice for many years that it was actually an addiction. I started to recognize eventually that it was a bit off, that I was off unless I did my practice. My mentor actually told me to give up yoga. And I was like, because
it's like a breakup. It's like a relationship that you have to end.
But this was the beginning of a hugely dramatic series of ego deaths for me. Right. And so that's the kind of mentorship I went through. It was very much, it was quite radical. It was a lot more radical than, say, the mentorship that I offer. But I had to break my yoga addiction. And what's interesting, I think would be interesting for other people to contemplate in a way, because I see a lot of people do the yoga thing and cultivate the yoga addiction in their own way. And it's often to do with physical strength or flexibility. But what I learned when I gave up the yoga was that there was a lot of energetic shit, for lack of a better word, underneath the muscle that I had built through yoga. So I became a Kundalini yoga teacher. I was so into it. And Kundalini was always like, I had super strong Kundalini. I was blind.
Okay, for those who don't know, when you say I had a lot of Kundalini energy, what does that mean?
Okay. So, Kundalini is a name for essentially your life force. So it's often depicted in yoga and Tantra as these two serpents that rise from the base of the spine, and they weave in and out of each other, and they move through all the chakras. So essentially you can think of it as life force energy. It's the energy of life and aliveness, but it's also sexual energy, because ultimately sexual energy is life force. As you said at the beginning, it's also our creative energy. It's also a healing energy. It's the power of creation. I always had a healthy body and a strong life force, and I was just, Taurus this way. It was like I was strong in my body. The interesting thing about that phase was I was activating a lot of Kundalini, but there was a lot that wasn't integrated. I hadn't done the root work, which is what I now guide a lot of women in. So the energy, the expression was ungrounded. And the yoga built a lot of muscle on top of a lot of energetic blockages, things that I needed to address and that I couldn't address while I was still addicted to the yoga. So basically, when I quit the yoga, reluctantly, then the deeper healing could take place.
Very powerful. And I love that you naturally have this energy and you have used it as like the gift. It's a gift that you have found ways to share and channel and also pull it out in other people. And I feel like that is what you're supposed, I don't want to tell anyone what to do with their lives, but like when you have a gift like that, the point is to understand it so deeply yourself and then to share it. And so I love that you've created this world and this community that's global to share your gift.
Yeah, it's actually also a lot of the work that I do with my clients is supporting them. It's almost like midwifing them to birth their own dharma. It's like I have it on my Instagram bio, doula of deep transformation, because that's often the first part You know, it's like the descent, like you said, it can be heavy, it can be difficult. There's sexual healing, there's trauma, there's stuff you have to face. That's often the prerequisite for then a system, a body, a being that you have the clarity, you have the freedom, the life force is able to flow, your creativity is able to flow. And that's when you can then birth your purpose. You can birth the Dharma that is your gifts. I will walk them through the descent and walk them through the process and walk beside them while they go on that journey into birthing their own gifts that's theirs. It's not the same as what I'm doing. It's not the same as what you're doing. It's each person's own. And the way that we get to that is by actually going on that inner journey.
That's so beautifully said. And I love that you are initiating people into their truth. It's not a formula of this is the result of this work. It's like, no, you discover what you need to be focusing on and harnessing, and that truth will come through, and then you just have to honor it. And it truly does look different for all of us. With our Portal of Power group, we had a variety of women coming from very different ages and backgrounds, and everybody had a different purpose come through. And that was like, it was just an affirmation to know that, like, stay on your path. Like, you got this. You don't need to try to emulate somebody else's. Like, your truth is your unique power. So go all in.
Totally. And I coined a phrase, sexual dharma, as well, because so much of my work is around sexuality. And I came to see so clearly that everyone has their own sexual dharma. So there are no rules or correct way to liberate your sexuality. You know, for one person, it looks like polyamory or free love. And for another, it looks like monogamy with the person that you met as a child. Like, it's, you know, it's different for each person. Only you can know the path for you. You can be guided. You know, I work a lot with astrology as well. I look at people's placements and their chart, and it's like, this is the codes of your blueprint, but only you know how to walk the way.
Yeah, you give people permission to own their shit. And that is really important as women specifically, because we're often like I said earlier, kind of like oppressed and pushed to the side, and our purpose isn't really supposed to be at the center of everything, but we are the creators. And why wouldn't it be at the center of everything we do in our lives? And that changes everyone's lives around us. So it's like, let's get going. Everything comes through us. And so finding that portal that's unique to each of us just feels like a responsibility, and also such a privilege that we get to hone in on that.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful combination of this individuality. And I think this is a kind of zeitgeist concept in a way. It's like the individuality of, like, yeah, you do you and your unique path and your codes and your gifts, and no one else can fulfill your role on this planet. And this, like, we are the same, you know, women are the same. Like, we all have wombs, we all can give birth. Like, we know what it is to birth, even if it's not children, you know. It's like, we know the process of the cycle, the bleeding, the process of being a woman, you know. And it's
Totally.
This is where in Portal of Power, there's so much, you know, going into your individual codes in a way and your individual journey. And then there's just this, like, coming back to the portal, you know, the throne of your feminine power, the yoni, the womb. This is what every woman has and can be responsible for. And that's the embodiment. That's the real embodiment. You know, it's like dropping women into their wombs. And I don't know, there's so much about it online, and there's so many people talking about pussy power and this kind of thing, but it's like, it really is the throne of your power. So however brilliant you are, if you are not able to descend into the body and into the roots and root, which is what I wasn't doing fully when I was high on Kundalini yoga, then you can't be in your full power. You're missing a very important part of the equation. And so reclaiming your sexuality is, it's just vital. It's vital if you want to grow into your highest potential, into your fullest expression. You cannot negate that part. And so I think midwifing that journey, and it's a journey of rebirthing yourself, because in the process you do end up birthing yourself anew. That's just like, that's what I'm so passionate about as a baseline for women.
There's levels to your work. And so I want you to just share 3 ways you invite women to drop into their womb and their root.
I'm a big fan of the yoni egg. So I work a lot with that practice because there are many benefits to it. But one of the primary things that practice offers is that it helps women to clear the energetic imprints that they receive and experience through sex, through intimacy, and that often they are not processing the impact of those experiences. So my journey, I have a lot of Scorpio in my chart, and it's like sexuality cannot be casual in my own personal experience. And so a lot of what I'm teaching is to help women understand the depth and the energetics of sex. It's like sex education that you don't get in school.
Yeah.
And so the yoni egg practice helps women to be empowered when they learn the energetics of sex, and they start to realize how much they have actually been impacted in their subconscious and in their tissues by sex. And then it's like, with that tool, you can really clear a lot, reclaim a lot. It's kind of like the super ally, the super tool for women to really also tone the muscles of the yoni, and to actually really become more conscious, more agile, more expressive in their sexuality at all levels, really.
Because the yoni egg, it's a physical stone shaped in a traditional egg form, and you insert it into your yoni.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's, if you look it up on the internet, there's all sorts of doctors saying you should never put a crystal in your vagina. And most of these doctors are men. When you have spoken with women who've used this tool, and obviously I introduced this tool to a lot of women, so I speak to a lot of them, then they are the ones to listen to. They will tell you.
You got me into the yoni egg and also a yoni wand, and it has been amazing. I mean, I cried the first time I used it. It connected me to these like very unseen things that I probably wouldn't have accessed any other way, because I love that it's a physical anchor. You're actually touching tissue and the crystals connecting to you physically. And so it actually gives you something to connect to. It's not this abstract idea of like, think about a stone in the sky or focus on your third eye. Even that can be difficult. So this physically drops you in. So, I don't want to tell anyone what to do with their bodies, but I would say find someone you trust, like Kashi, who can give you the practices that show you how to approach this tool in a really safe and expansive way.
100%, because there's specific ways to use this, and there are ways that are healthy and ways that are like distorted version of how to work with this tool, which is very ancient. They say it came from Taoist, it's a Taoist practice, but they say it came from ancient China, but I think the Druids were using it, and many other civilizations. But I think what's beautiful about the egg is also that it creates more intimacy with self. And I think what a lot of people project Tantra is all about is about intimacy with someone else. People think it's like slow sex or eye gazing, or people often think that Tantra is something you have to practice with a partner, and it's not the case, even in classical Tantra. But for me, it's especially important to support people to cultivate inner intimacy. So men as well as women, like being really, truly intimate with your energy, with your body, with your emotions, with all layers of you, because we can only meet another at the depth to which we've met ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, we are masculine and feminine. We are so much, we have the whole universe inside us. And so I think that this is why the egg and, certain foundational practices, they are so restorative. And this basically bleeds into everything in your life. So with the yoni egg, it's like people like that it makes you way more orgasmic. Like that's a really big thing, you know? And at the same time, it goes so much beyond your physical pleasure, but it does support you to reclaim that, which, as you said at the beginning, is such an important thing for a woman, you know, to really own her pleasure and really have that permission in her life and in herself to live in her sensuality, because we are such erotic creatures.
Yes. Okay. So you're saying all these amazing words, for you are so integrated into your world, but I've shared some of my experiences that I've done with you with other people, and they're like, but what does that mean? And they just are like, come on, like that's so abstract, that's so esoteric. And I'm like, yeah, it definitely can be. So let's take a minute to break down a few of like these commonly used words. How would you describe Tantra to someone new?
Mm-hmm. There's so many ways it can be described, but fundamentally, the main principles that I tend to work with that are tantric is this union of polarity at so many different levels. Let's start with, you have men and women on the planet, children of mothers,
Yes,
you know,
we do.
men and women. And basically, as well, we have masculine and feminine energy. So coming back to the Kundalini and the serpents, you have a masculine and a feminine serpent. You have both these energetics, both these polarities within you. So a big part of being happy in life, let alone being enlightened, is balance, right? Balance between the masculine and feminine hemispheres of the brain. That's when the mind is quiet and we feel peaceful. Balance in the body, you know, balance between work-life balance. You know, all of this is often just explaining, describing the balance of masculine and feminine energies. So Tantra is the practice where you unite the masculine and feminine within you and outside you. That's why it can involve sex. It does include sexuality. And at the same time, it's the practice of uniting the body and the soul, right? It includes everything. So sexuality and spirituality, you as an individual with the beloved, that is the divine. So it's this path of the heart, which welcomes everything. In Tantra, everything is one and everything is sacred because there's no separation. So the beauty of this path is that the heart is the place that all paradox can exist, that all polarities can meet and be held as one, be held in love. And so, you know, the love is basically the way and the path. And uniting everything in love and coming into that remembrance that we are love and that our divinity is also love. But it welcomes all of the shadow. It welcomes all of the negative. It welcomes all of the nitty gritty, shitty parts of life. And it recognizes that all of it is sacred and all of it is love, just taking a specific form. So this allows you to walk with freedom. It allows you to remember yourself as love and continue coming back to love. And at the same time, it's very artful, you know, it's very skillful. It's a balance. It's a journey of integration. It's not just like sunsets and puppies and everything is love, we're done. It's like, no, you really descend all the way in order to ascend all the way. You know, it's inclusive of the feminine, of the body, of all of bodily functions and, you know, everything, kinks, desires, weird stuff. It's all welcome. That doesn't mean you act out on your every weird fantasy, but you get to lean in. Like we cover this in Portal of Power, existential kink. You know, we get to honor all parts of the journey and all parts of ourselves. And that's what brings us home to wholeness and brings us home to truth and brings us home to love and being ourselves.
Okay, so Tantra is everything. So what I want to say,
It's like, can you keep it simple?
No, because you can't, because you're not. But what I love everything you just said, and people need to hear that because they're going to resonate with a lot of those
You can add
elements. So Tantra is a practice, it's a way of being, it's an exploration, it's an application, it's kind of a joining of both sides of the masculine and feminine, the yin, the yang.
I was going to say, here's a really simple answer to the question, is
Yeah.
the yin yang, right? That's it. That symbol is Tantra. You know, it's like inextricably woven. Each one contains the other. Together, they make wholeness. It's like that with the polarity. Yeah. It's a path that welcomes all parts of you. And when you welcome all parts of you, you don't resist yourself. You meet all parts of you with love. And that is such an exhale for the human being. When you just accept yourself deeply, you know, instead of trying to mold yourself and perfect yourself. And of course, we're always evolving. We're always, you know, a work in progress. But there's something about the heart of Tantra that is like, all parts of you are welcome. And I think that, at least in my work and bringing a tantric lens to people, like it gives them this exhale, this like, oh, okay, this is actually okay. This part of me is okay. I don't have to erase it. I don't have to pretend it's not there. So I think that's an important part of what this path offers on a kind of social level as well.
Because I think truly we are all trying to find that self-acceptance. Mm-hmm. I see it with my parents who are in their 70s. I see it with, you know, the young kids who are just like discovering themselves from a like hormonal level. And they're like, who am I now at this stage? We're all trying to find that. Kashi, tell me about eroticism. How would you describe that in a few sentences?
Eroticism. For me, eroticism is so natural, so innate. It is the energy of life moving through you. It is your aliveness when you give it permission and you don't contain it, you know, and you allow it to move as it wants to move. And this can be nuanced because in the tantric world, some people are very like, trust your eros. Trust your eros. Your eros being essentially that Kundalini life force energy, but also your turn on, right? It can also be the energy of desire. And so that desire is very healthy. And we women have a lot of it. It's funny because I find that a lot of the time people think that men are the ones that want all the sex. And it's like a healthy woman, a woman who's actually liberated her body from social conditioning and, you know, trauma. It's like we are endlessly desirous. We are insatiable creatures, not just at a sexual level, but also at all levels. You know, we have this amazing capacity to desire, and that is dangerous on a social level. But when we give ourselves that permission to be in our eroticism, we become so magnetic. This is before you even pair it with another being. This is just a woman who's in her erotic nature, who allows herself to be penetrated by life, because, you know, we are porous, we are receptive. And when we let things in, we let things touch us, then eroticism includes the wind on your skin. It includes, you know, your sexual turn on, but it also includes like the feeling of the sun. You know, I will have such erotic experiences just lying on the beach, not because anything is happening other than I'm just lying on the beach, but because I'm permeable to the sensation and I know how to let it in, you know. And once you let it in, it's like you can also let it out. But I think the reason eroticism is considered dangerous is because we have to learn to be responsible with it.
I completely agree. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's an erotic side to all of us, but some of us have it more expressed and more integrated. And I remember being younger, probably in my like late teens, early 20s, college days. And I would just, the way I kind of postured myself and would move my body was, I think it gave off like an erotic vibe. And so friends would tell me, they're like, why are you being so sexy? Like, stop, you know, don't act like that. Or like, that's weird. And would kind of check me. And I always felt like I had to contain that natural movement that I have.
Mm.
And it took me years to realize that I wasn't looking to attract a man. I wasn't trying to flirt with somebody. I was actually just being connected to the elements and the situation that I was in. If I was by a body of water, it brought out that eroticism more, and that kind of response in me that wanted to feel and accept more. And that was never really encouraged. And so finding it at this age is like, it's very freeing. Like you said, it comes back to freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And also being mindful of when you share and express this very potent energy.
Exactly that, because it is potent. It's a voltage. And the more you cultivate it through tantric practices, through sexuality, through, practicing basically with it at all levels, it turns up the voltage. It's like the more contained you are as well energetically. And that's also part of the work I do with women and with the yoni egg, is like it helps women stop leaking their sexual energy. And that turns up the voltage of their creativity, of their own healing, of their own lives. You also have to be aware, and you learn this, through being socialized and through experience, that it invokes things. It invokes the male gaze. It invokes judgment. It invokes attention. It invokes all sorts of things. And so you do naturally learn to contain it. And you need to. We're not living in the Garden of Eden. We're not living in one big orgy. It's like there are spaces, and tantric temples can offer a space like this where your full erotic expression is invited and welcomed, and there are rules, and it's a container, and that's one thing. But to walk, I think for any woman, like, we are so erotic in our nature. If we were to fully take the lid off that in every moment of every day, it would be exhausting because of what we would invoke and the energies that would come towards us. So of course, in a way, this is the dilemma for a woman, is like, I want to be fully expressed, and yet you also have to temper yourself, because ultimately I believe we need to be responsible for that power at all levels. And that actually takes quite a skill. And at the same time, we want to be expressed and liberated and feel free. So it's a balance. Yeah.
It is that Tantra yin and yang of like push and pull and control and release. And it's kind of, but that is life, isn't it? Life is one big contraction. And so we're just kind of working with that closure and opening and release and expansion. And when you start this work, it just becomes more, I don't want to say work, let's say play. It becomes more play. It becomes more exploration, because you think you have like, maybe you find some sensual release with the yoni egg, and you're like, wow, I'm feeling really like connected to my inner life force, and I just want to like move my body a certain way. And then all of a sudden you're realizing that there's a place and a time for that. And you can like maybe release that too much on somebody, and you're like, I actually didn't want to share that with them. And it just becomes this awareness that you bring in. But that also becomes the play of it all and the exploration of it. And I think that's really fun. I don't know. I'm enjoying it.
And again, that's where coming back to the sexual dharma, and everybody's is different. It's like some people also, you get in a committed relationship. I have a friend, she was in a long-term relationship with someone who was very traditional, and she's a tantrika, she's wild, but her relationship was very traditional. And so she had to contain that energy very much so around everyone except her partner. It's just basically very individual and very specific to the culture. If you walk around in your full sensuality in Egypt, it's like you're going to attract a whole different kind of attention than if you do it in California, right? So the culture is also relevant. The relationship that you're in is relevant. The people around you are relevant. And it's this power that women can wield. And also a lot of women use it to manipulate. They use it very deliberately to manipulate. So I think there's every woman has to really meet herself and discover her own like ethics, her own framework, her own truth in the realm of erotic expression. And it's going to also change, as we grow, as we evolve.
Absolutely. But those ethics that you're talking about are life ethics. Those are personal practices that you should have anyways. And I don't know if all of us have a personal set of ethics that we actually have refined and processed and like adhere to. So, like you said earlier, this work bleeds into everything else in life. Your work relationships, the way you household, the way you eat, and the way you curate relationships. And I find that to be why this is so important. It's not just like personal expression, like sexual connection. It will truly reset the way that you step into life itself. And that feels really powerful.
Yeah, it's transformational, you know, because at the end of the day, your erotic energy, your sexual energy is alchemical in nature. That's why it's healing. It's like fire. Fire changes what it touches. And so you transform, and your life transforms because you are the center of your life, and everything is actually a mirror for your own state, for your own healing journey, because I believe that life wants us to evolve, wants us to heal, and so that everything placed on our path is actually of service to us. If we know how to extract the medicine, if we know how to read it, if we know how to digest it, if we take the time to digest it. You know, with sexuality, some people, they just like bounce from one experience to the other and they never digest what just happened, and then they just repeat the same pattern over and over again. Whereas when you actually take the time to digest anything, a sexual experience, a container, a course, an afternoon, then you get to extract the meaning for you. And that's how we grow.
Yeah. You taught us that perspective is everything. You know, it's how we perceive the world around us and within us. And we can kind of choose that perspective. It's not forced upon us. If we're free, if we have the luxury of being able to curate our life the way that feels the best for us, then we have the opportunity to perceive everything a certain way. And that is also an evolution. And I think the more evolved you become, the more you do see everything as of service and not as a problem. It's in the way, it's taking me away from something. Like, actually, which is our next conversation of intimacy, is these challenges, these yucky things that happen to us or whatever, it's actually bringing us closer to ourselves if we allow it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would love to talk about what intimacy is for you and how you teach that to your students, your clients.
One simple definition of intimacy that is used quite widely, but it's a really good one, is into me I see. So intimacy, into me I see, like real intimacy starts there, is looking inside yourself.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I've never heard that. I love it.
It's a beautiful reframe, because people think intimacy, again, like Tantra is like, oh, you need a partner. You know, intimacy is sexuality. Intimacy is some shared experience involving the genitals. You know, people have all sorts of preconceptions. But yeah, intimacy is being close to yourself, is knowing yourself. Know thyself, because if you believe or experience that we are divine, that our essence is divine, and that everything is within us, then what else do we need to do but know ourselves? It sounds very self-indulgent. You know, my mother was always just like, oh, your navel-gazing ways. You know, it's so self-indulgent. Most people don't have time for this stuff. But it's like, it depends what you prioritize. And I have found that the more intimate I am with my own process and my own practice and my own self, then the more I actually have to pour into other people. The more wisdom I have, the more insight, the more I can serve.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yeah. So, you know, intimacy also is something we all crave so deeply. For me, I know that nothing fulfills me more than intimacy, and not only sexual intimacy, but emotional intimacy. I'm one of these people that, like, if I'm having the worst day in the world and a girlfriend or a client in need texts me for support, and I'm able to be, this is very Cancerian, my Cancer ascendant, it's like I'm able to be there for someone, then I'm like, my life has purpose. I feel so good because I am there for them in intimacy. And likewise, if I am going through something and I just have one person who goes like, oh, babe, I see you, I feel you. It's like, everything is a million times better, because this is what really carries meaning. It's not how much money do you make. It's not how many followers you have on Instagram. For me, it's like, how much can you be seen and see others and really meet in depth? This is my nature anyway. It's like, I love depth. That's why, defining things in simple terms is quite a nice challenge for me. It's like, I love being met in my depth. I love meeting others in depth. And so I think that fulfills something at a very human level that makes us feel connected. It dissolves this feeling of separation, and that we have to somehow strive or struggle to be good enough or to be worthy. When we have that connection, like I've seen it so many times in women's circles, somebody comes with like this thing that they have so much shame about, and they're in tears and they find the courage to speak it. And someone else just goes like, I had the same thing. And in that moment, so much dissolves. Like there's healing right there.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I'm not alone in this.
Yeah.
I'm not alone in this life. I'm not alone in this experience. We are together. And that togetherness is what we crave. It's therapeutic. That togetherness is the union, is the unity of all that is. It cuts through this illusion that we're on our own. So yeah, I think intimacy is so important. And I think that's why I'm excited about tantrahuasca for couples and for practice partners. And basically, this is the first time in this retreat that we're inviting men into the space. We've had 6 retreats with women. And it's so intimate. It's so intimate among the women. There is no sexual intimacy. There's no like sexual practices that women are doing together in tantrahuasca level 1 at all. But there's so much intimacy on a soul level, on an emotional level. And so now to be welcoming men into the space and cultivating this intimacy in a very conscious way through practice and, through the journey, it feels so important, because in a way, the gender divide is really deep. It's really built into our society in so many ways. And so coming together, not just because we're a couple and we have sex and we've chosen to be in a relationship, but because we need to meet each other in intimacy as brothers and sisters of this human family, and actually remember that we're on the same team, that we are one.
Yeah. That's really healing work, Kashi. I do want to recognize that you primarily only worked with women, or did you work with men one-on-one?
I've been working with men since 2022, but most of my clients are women. But I do have a men's course online, and I do work with men in like live events and one-on-one as well. But more of my clients are women.
So hearing this transition, I want to know what sparked this moment, because I know you do the retreat with Millie Moonstone, right?
Millie.
And so you guys hold this space together and curate it together. So where was that spark for either you or her or together that you said, okay, this is relational intimacy that maybe needs to be explored more and held space for?
Well, the story of tantrahuasca is that Millie conceived it many years ago with her beloved at the time, who was the man who introduced her to, well, he was serving ayahuasca and she was playing music, and they did 7 years of ceremonies together. And so she didn't know she was essentially apprenticing to serve the medicine. But when he passed away in 2020, she took on the mantle. And so so she's part of that lineage, which is an offshoot of the Santa Daime. It's very direct lineage, actually, from the very beginning of when ayahuasca emerged from the jungle. But essentially, they had the concept back then when they were a couple and they were dreaming up their future to do tantrahuasca for couples. And right around that time, I came back into her life. We've known each other since we were 20. And I came back into her life after, I think we hadn't seen each other for 13 years, shortly after he died. And we went for a walk in the woods and just had this whole day together, basically, reuniting. And she told me about tantrahuasca. And as soon as she said the word, I don't know how it came up or anything, that word just like my whole body just was like singing. It was like, I felt like a bit similar to how I told you, the books and all the work of Tantra. It was like, I know this already. I felt that when I heard tantrahuasca. It was like it was already like inside me.
Yeah, that recognition.
Yeah, it was complete recognition, complete activation. And then we basically birthed it together. And so we started with women because it felt like this is the foundation, and we were two women. So we said, let's start with that. We always had the vision to bring it to couples, and we always had the men asking us, what about us? When are we going to have it? You know, we had a lot of men asking us that. And we said, always like divine time. And I think that we got to a stage that it just made sense. It felt like the time was ripe. I think we had our own ideas of like, wouldn't it be nice if we were both in union and our partners could, you know, be part of it with us? And we had this fantasy, but then it was like, we're not supposed to wait for that. That's in its own divine timing. The path of union is so much bigger than just one person that you have sex with, right? It's like I said, it's Tantra, everything. It's the union of all. So we said, let's just go for it. Let's just do this now, and let's bring on the brothers, and let's do this healing that the world really, really needs. And I've run quite a few in-person events here that have included men, and every time I do, it's such an amazing energy. I've had like also at festivals, I've had couples completely renew their relationships that are people on the verge of breakups. And like one workshop later, they're just seeing their whole relationship in a new light with so much gratitude and appreciation for their partner. So it really can change the game. It feels every time like this is healing the world. This is healing the planet.
Well, because it goes back to how you describe Tantra is like the integration of both sides, feminine and masculine. And so for you to be fully leaning into that feels very right and very necessary. I think we need that balance more than ever on the planet. So the people that are coming to like your first tantrahuasca, men and women, are they coming in couples? Are they coming individually? What's the structure?
So initially we had the concept was it was just for couples. So rather than it being a container where it's like singles who want to maybe hook up with people, it's like, that's not the vibe. This is for committed couples, you know, because it's deep, and we're working with medicine as well. And it's, you know, very powerful work. So we said people in committed relationships. And then we realized like there are people who are really on that path who are not currently partnered, but they are so committed to this work, and we want to include them. So essentially we shifted the concept a little bit to include dedicated practice partners, which means that let's say a woman wants to come, but she's not in a committed relationship. She might have a friend, you know, that is also really on this path and really inspired to come. And they agree, like, we're going to be doing these practices together. Obviously, everything is invitation. So there's a lot of boundaries and consent. But again, it's not primarily about sexual intimacy. It will absolutely fuel your sexual intimacy. You know, it will take you so much deeper in sexual intimacy, but it's not, you know, again, it's like Tantra is not only about sex. So you can come and you can do this relational work with someone you feel really safe with somebody that you have agreements with, that you get each other, you're ready to work together.
Yeah, it's a safe space.
It's a safe space, and you can heal so much this way, which means that when you are actually in a partnership, you've done your work. You are much more ready to stand in the fire of love with someone because you have worked through a lot of your stuff in a dedicated container.
Yeah, that goes back to some of your like core practices that I've learned from you, is that you have to kind of be your own safe space first, and then you can invite others to like really transform with you. And that goes for sexual intimacy. You know, if you want to discover something with a partner, that's amazing. But like, you've kind of invited me to do it first with myself, and just like see what it's like to witness yourself in that moment and to give yourself what you're desiring. And then when someone else comes in to share that space with you, it's like, oh, okay, I recognize this. It feels safe. And so it allows you to go even deeper. So with that being said, like, can you give us an example of some relational work that you might guide during the tantrahuasca with couples or with men and women partners?
Well, I don't want to give away too much because it's a bit of a mystery school, you know. I can give you an example from a recent practice that I guided. I actually did a Beltane ceremony here. Beltane is this festival, you know, it's a Celtic festival of sexuality, life force, spring. And so we worked with polarity. So we worked with the masculine and feminine. And I led them through a practice where let's say the woman was able to ask her male partner for what her feminine really craved. I was able to express, like, what is my feminine needing right now? And then they would come to some agreement. So let's say her feminine really needed to feel held. Then her partner would be able to, like, physically go into a posture or a practice where he would hold her and give her what her feminine needed as her, actually a reflection of her inner masculine. Do you see what I mean? So it's like you're externalizing your inner masculine in the person, and they are serving you by holding you if that's what you needed. And so the practice on a psychological level is actually bringing you into more balance and harmony. And it helps people to identify, oh, what is it that my feminine needs? What is it that my masculine needs?
Exactly.
So it's fun for men as well, because men, got to drop in and be like, what does my feminine need? What does my masculine need? And I think that sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, like when women think about their inner masculine, they sometimes are like, well, he's here to serve my feminine. And it's a bit like this kind of like, or protect my feminine or provide for my feminine, and it's like, what does he need? What does my inner masculine actually need, other than to just serve my feminine and look after her and take care of her and give her all the things that she needs to do?
No, this like really resonates. Yeah, I feel that. I love that invitation to explore beyond your own needs. And also, don't you think in the giving, in the offering, there's also so much relational intimacy and expansion? Like, it's not just about me on my throne getting, kissed and rose petaled and all the things. It's like, we are, as women, as creators, we are also designed to offer and to gift,
to nurture.
And so, how has that come up for you personally, where you've found expansion in your offerings, whether that's to men or to community?
I actually wrote a post about this the other day because, I had a lot of resistance to working with men, because it was like, okay, I'm going to have men come to my house. And, some of the practices I know for men are really intimate. So there was a bit of a struggle for me of like, how am I going to do this in a way that feels clean energetically, that doesn't invite projections? And I had a projection on the men, actually, that like they were going to potentially come with sleazy energy or think that I was available. And I didn't want to, a lot of my work, it's not me touching people. A lot of my transmission is energetic. I'll guide people in touch. I'm a super tactile person, but when I'm working as a guide, like when I'm leading people, it's I'm like, okay, men can come and I'll teach, but I'm not a tantric body worker, for example. It's just not my thing, because I personally, I absorb so much energy. Like I'm very porous this way. So that is just, it's not
the boundary that you have.
Exactly. So I had all sorts of projections of what the men would expect or what they would think of me or what they would want. And it was just such a calling. Like, no, I actually want to serve the brothers. I'm doing all this amazing work with women, but like when I get over my own shit about it, I actually, like, when I drop into my heart, it's like, I want to love men. I love men. So how can I express the love in my heart for the masculine in ways that are safe, in ways that are in integrity, in ways that are going to touch and transform them? Because let's be honest, like that transformation is also required. And the feminine has been doing so much work and the men have been doing so much work. But I think we're at a point where the feminine empowerment has almost become a little bit over the top in some ways. And like, women are so kind of on their high horse, and it's part of a response to like coming out of the persecution and, like claiming our power back. Men got so hammered for their primal nature, and this has become a trauma in them. So a lot of the work that I do with men, and I do it in my own way, is like to really help them liberate that primal power, because this is the power that also women really want, because we want it to protect us. It's like,
I was going to say the primal power. I just want people to know that you're not saying that they should just be out expressing their primal power. They should actually be so contained and aware of that power that they use it responsibly and are also find places to safely express it, because the women also need it, but it's not through non-consensual experience or taking advantage or anything like that.
Of course, but it's that dark masculine energy that like women actually crave. And I think so many men have become, we chopped off so many balls, and now the women are a bit like, where are the men? You know, that are the warriors that have this like throwdown, and they're out there, don't get me wrong, but I think socially there's been this like, I know a lot of men where they're like, I have to walk on eggshells now. You know, I walk on eggshells, and I'm too scared to open the door for women because I might get castrated for it. You know, we're in this weird, like everything has to be so equal. And it's like, we're not the same. Equality doesn't mean we just level everything.
When I hear like the integration of feminine, masculine, and sort, you know, finding balance, I do kind of see it as a 1-to-1 ratio. But I think it's actually, they're like two different energies, and it's more about blending them and not like putting them on the same level.
If you think about the yin yang, to go back to that, because it's nice and simple, you know, there's no point in trying to make the black side of the yin yang white. You lose the whole thing. Then it's just a white circle.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's kind of like, in our efforts to bring equality, sometimes we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. And it's like, you have women acting like men, and you have men afraid to act like men in case they get in trouble, you know? And so when I speak about activating men in their primal power, I mean teaching them how to move that energy, how to welcome that energy rather than suppress it, how to, the same way with women, it's working with your sexual energy in a way that supports your health, that supports your creativity, that supports you being fully expressed, you being able to give your gifts to the world. Basically, rather than shutting that part of you down, how can you harness it? How can you embrace it? How can you bring it to the mission? Because we have a big mission on our hands right now. You know, the world is in a certain kind of way, and we need all hands on deck with full power, with full sovereignty. And the thing is, sexuality is one of the things that's been most hijacked, you know, through pornography, through religion, through all these different social constructs. So when we reclaim that as men and women, we become far more unstoppable, and we become far more difficult to control. In a good way.
In a good way. Yes. I was like, uh-huh. I love it. Important timing that you're doing this offering. I was surprised when you told me, but I was like, of course this is happening. This is actually the medicine that we all need. And I'm so excited to hear about how your first retreat goes with these group of people. Do you have that slated? Is there a date?
We have November the 3rd to the 10th, and it's just down the road. So it's on the most, you know, Prince Uva. It's on the most beautiful Caribbean beach ever. And it's right on the beach. So in the temple, where we'll have ceremony and practice and everything, you can literally hear the waves. It's so divine. And yeah, we're very excited.
And are you still accepting applications for people to come?
We still have spots. We actually only just launched, but there are limited spots. The temple is only so big, and but people are invited. There are spots open.
Amazing. No, I want people to know about this. And how long is it? It's a week-long retreat.
So it's 7 nights, 7 days, and it includes 3 ayahuasca ceremonies. So 3 of those days, and we do the works in the day. So it's beautiful because you get to sleep. Your circadian rhythm is maintained. And then the rest of the days we have practice. There's so many ceremonies apart from the actual Aya ceremonies. It's like, it's a full week of ritual and deep practice and intimacy. Yeah, you'll be intimate with your partner, but it's also like, you know, the whole group as a collective always goes so deep. And at least with the previous tantrahuascas, it's like the way that the women leave, they are so lit, so radiant, like lit by their own power in the most beautiful, soft, sensual, delicious way. And so I'm so excited to see what this does for couples and for men. And it's going to be
I'm so thrilled for you. And I just have to say one thing about the ayahuasca experience mixed with all the practices that you offer. I don't know the tantrahuasca journey that you take people on. I have not done it, but it's on the list. But I just have to say, from my own experience with ayahuasca, it's an amazing medicinal, awakening, life-changing experience with this plant medicine. But what I was missing from my retreat is that there weren't really the integration tools to implement all this like wisdom that I was downloading and like sensation, because I had a very sensual ayahuasca initiation, if you want to call it that. And I was just kind of left to like process all that on my own, figure it out. And I have a feeling that you are providing the physical, the emotional, the spiritual tools that allows you to take what you learn through the plant and put it into action. And I think that's something that people should see as highly valuable.
Both sides of it, because that's why it's such a gorgeous marriage, the tantra and the ayahuasca. Really, I mean, when people hear it, sometimes they're shocked, because it's like typically in ayahuasca they separate sexuality, like no sex around the thing, around the ceremony. But what we've seen with tantrahuasca is we give people these embodiment tools, these practices, and then they take them into ceremony. So in ceremony you have your own, we're not putting you into practices. Sometimes we do with like the very beginning of the ceremony, or with smaller doses, but the majority of the ceremony is like you have freedom. We facilitate in a way that gives a lot of freedom, so you can really be in your own medicine and work with her in that unique way that she works with you, because she works so individually with people, right? Yeah. Some people have very sensual experiences. I'm also like that. My experiences with ayahuasca were super erotic, and it was like, okay, what do I do with this? Exactly. So this is why tantrahuasca is so liberating. But then it's like when you're in the ceremony, you have tools to help move energy. Now you're actually more equipped to be even more effective and efficient in your process. And then when you come out, because we have 7 days, there is time, it's spacious. Yeah. There's integration, there's sharing, there's a lot of support, so that by the time you emerge, it's like you're actually grounded in it. But then you also have all the embodiment tools and practices, and in this case, it'll be like relational stuff as well, that you can continue to apply, so that integration is like a smooth landing. We like to say a long tail with a ceremony, and it's like, all the way, like smooth dragon's tail all the way. So you're just gliding off the edge of the tail and back into your life.
But like nature supports, and I think it's a tool to make this experience 10 times more meaningful. So if you're going to go to the Caribbean, you might as well go do tantrahuasca.
I say to people, because we have also people coming who've never actually sat with ayahuasca before, and I'm just like, in my experience, 20 years of experience with this medicine and all sorts of different ceremonies, if you're coming to this and it's your first time, you are nailing it on the first round.
Nailing it.
Yep. To me, there's no more optimal. I can't think of how to make it optimal.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm sure you have it in a gorgeous space. So people can find more about that on your Instagram page, on your website. Where would you direct them?
Tantrahuasca.com. And me and Millie. And Millie is she's, just to mention Millie, because she's the musician. So she is really the musical shaman, because she is so exquisite musically. And the music is very important, And she also brings, I think, about 900 ceremonies of experience to the work. Yeah.
I think it's important to know who's guiding you. So thank you for mentioning her. I do have to just say that music is vital. I had a group of like Indigenous musicians who guided our ceremony, and I cannot have imagined it without that. It was provocative, and also like so holding when you needed it. And it also is music is a guide. If you are experiencing the plant medicine, it can take you on a whole other journey. So between the plant medicine, between you two women as guides, between the music, the nature, really special opportunity. I hope I get to attend one of these days.
It's one of my favorite things in life is tantrahuasca.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I want to bring it back to intimacy to close out our conversation. And because I think there's a little bit of a gap in the world right now where people just don't feel as connected to themselves for various reasons. I think just through lifestyle, through technology, we tend to be taken away from ourselves. And I want to know a few of your personal practices that you would invite others to start integrating into their life today, if they can, that have changed your life.
Well, I'm a big advocate for the morning practice, preferably the morning practice and the evening practice. But for me, the morning is more important because, you know, once you've done the morning, done your practice in the morning, you're set for the day. You know, the distraction, like you said, is just, it's ruthless.
Yeah.
And
it's it's a disruptor.
It's so, it absolutely pulls us away from ourselves. And, you know, also just like the sort of 3-second attention span because of scrolling and what have you, you know. So anything like long form as a practice, such as reading a book, you know, even watching a movie, like an actual piece of art, a good movie, you know, as opposed to the scrolling is good practice. But before you meet anything, if you can take even just 10 minutes in the morning and be with you, whether you're on a yoga mat and you stretch it out, whether you are just like sitting in meditation, try and do you without guidance, without some input, something you have to press play on, ideally. But if you need that support, then beautiful, use it. But for me, it's like I like to do Pilates in the morning, but like at least half the time I do feminine free form practice, where it's like sometimes I'm moving around, I'm doing all these moves, sometimes I'm dancing, sometimes I'm stretching, sometimes I'm crying, sometimes I'm like holding myself, sometimes I'm journaling, sometimes I'm like just lying on the mat. Like,
it's really maybe just starting with creating the structure of a time frame and saying, I'm gonna just turn off the phones, I'm not gonna open the laptop, I'm not gonna like do anything for 30 minutes to start.
If you can't do 30, then 15, you know, some people are mamas and it's hard, but just something that honors you and your need for intimacy with yourself before you go and mix up your energy and your life with everything out there and all the things that are demanding from you. You know, it's like plugging into the life force that comes from earth, that comes from the source. You know, this is the vertical, right? We tend to source a lot through the horizontal. You know, that's like everybody else, life, stuff, you know, but it's like, this is our vertical axis is like, if you're not sourcing from there, then you're going to be looking to get everything you need from the horizontal. And that's not optimal.
Yes.
You're vertically sourcing, then you have more to pour into whatever it is you need to pour into. And you're not dependent on everything else. You're self-sourced, you're more sovereign. Let me just take a few breaths and connect with me. Let me bring my hands to my body. You know, let me actually inhabit this vehicle. Because truly, we are, especially women, we are a vehicle for love. But when we are like bombarded by all these frequencies, we can miss connecting to the love that is actually already in us.
Yes.
You know, the gift that is already there. And then we walk around like beggars when we're actually kings and queens.
For me, my morning practice to connect with my higher self is writing. And I have shared this in another podcast where to talk about intimacy with self for me starts with pen to paper, and it starts with no expectations. It starts from free form thought processing and just release. It's a way for me to digest. And that feels like a way, like going back to what you said, before I take on the noise of the world, before I pick up the phone, before I talk to anybody about anything, doesn't matter how big or small, I am setting my vibe. I am processing what's within me and not what I'm being told to process. I would welcome anyone to do that for literally 5 to 10 minutes because you can fill a lot of pages in that time. Mm-hmm. And then close the book. Like you said, you know, feel yourself, connect with your body. How does that feel to get that stuff out of your head and onto the page, and take a step forward through your day and see how that changes things?
Totally. I mean, I have filled so many books with journaling. I do it less now. And I don't love that I do it so much less, but I recently picked it up again.
Nice.
It was so formative for me for so many years of my life and now when I look back, occasionally when I'm like back in London at my mom's, I can like flip through an old book because she has all my old journals. And
Um,
yeah, she keeps them for me. She's not allowed to read them, you know. But
yeah, of course.
when I look back,
it's your soul.
yeah, it's my soul. I see things I knew, you know, like when you're looking in hindsight and I'm reading things I wrote at like 21, 23, 25, and it's like, I didn't know, but I knew. It's fascinating.
I love that you're saying that. I think messages come through the pen. And so that's another reason why I think it's a spiritual practice and not just a cleanse your mind kind of thing. There are things that you need to hear that only like your pen to paper can deliver. Even more from like typing in a Word document, I really think it's that tactical pen to paper that is like a channel. And I think it's transformational. I think it's necessary to allow whatever those subconscious messages are, give them a chance to be heard and felt. Because sometimes you'll surprise yourself with what comes through.
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, we have a lot of thoughts in our head that are not ours. They sound like us,
yes,
but they don't belong to us. They're actually our mother's perspective, coming back to what you said about perspective, our father, our teacher, our best friend. It's not actually truly ours. And I think when you write something down, like my frustration with journaling is like, I have too many thoughts. I can't write fast enough.
Girl.
But
I know.
Because it takes a minute to actually write out the thought, you almost have an opportunity to recognize if it's not actually true to you, if it's not really yours, you know, it's out. And because you have to, it's more than just a microsecond flashing through your brain. You get to identify it. And it's not about analysis, but it's about more cultivating the witness and being able to see yourself more objectively, which is helpful because you're less caught up in your own drama.
Oh, that is it. That is it. It actually cultivates perspective. It takes you into your own voice, into your own being, rather than into the stories that sometimes were planted by someone else. And I just did a writing workshop last night, and the facilitator is always talking about rewriting your story. And so I think there's a lot of that theme with what you do, and also with writing. And so I think there's a spectrum of healing and practices that we can do. And I think that's why I wanted to have this conversation, is to show people that like, you don't just have to join a tantrahuasca ceremony like tomorrow, you know, that might be too much. That might be overwhelming. Eventually, I think that's an amazing thing to open yourself up to because of what it can offer. But there's also like daily practices, like you just offered, and embodiment practices, getting into yourself, feeling yourself first before you give yourself to anybody else. And so thank you for painting this picture of possibility and how to reconnect and build intimacy with yourself.
You know, your body and you is what you have for this whole lifetime. So if you're not committed to yourself, what are you doing? You're only ever going to exhaust yourself pouring into everything else. You know, you are the source of your life in that sense. You're not the ultimate source, but you are the center of your story. You're the author of your story. You're manifesting your reality all the time. But when you commit to self-love and really not only knowing yourself, but loving yourself, that will see you through all the bumps and the dramas and the heartbreaks and all of it, all the initiations. Like, so build that trust in yourself now. Build that confidence in yourself, build that love for yourself, because that's what's going to see you through all the things.
Yeah, so well said. I think if intimacy scares you or it makes you uncomfortable, that is the medicine for you. And you can cultivate intimacy with yourself in really small ways, and then gradually you can deepen those ways. And I think through sensuality and sexuality is a really deep way to become more intimate with yourself. And you don't have to start there, but build up to that and allow yourself to grow, to become intimate with all facets of yourself, not just your mind. You know, I think there's too much thinking going on, too much like brain stuff. I'm like, what about the heart stuff? What about the body stuff? Like, we have so many bodies that we should be channeling and tuning into. And that's what your work does. So for everyone listening, I'll leave all of Kashi's info so you know where to find her. She shares so much content on her Instagram that, you know, from just live streams to written content that it's such an offering. You can just start there to learn more about this, and then eventually, jump into a retreat, book a one-on-one, join a course or a workshop, and get to know yourself.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share?
The thing that comes is just it's love, it's like really, this is why I say Tantra is a path of love. Love is something that we can all understand. You don't need to define it further. It's like love, come back to love. I was on a call with my Mystic Muse ladies earlier today, and we had this moment where it was just like calling out a way of being, a way of talking to yourself, of making yourself wrong, and realizing, hey, that's not love. Sometimes we're so into the idea of self-improvement, or becoming trauma-free. And it's like the method, the real method is love. Like that is what brings you the transformation, the softening, the self-acceptance. That's what softens the resistance and allows you to really break through whatever is the thing that's holding you back. So start with you, and with really bringing yourself, meeting yourself with love, no matter what you're going through, no matter what demon you're slaying, no matter what your mind is telling you. If you realize that you're not being loving towards yourself, that's the place to catch yourself and reset and ask yourself, okay, what is loving? How can I actually be loving with myself in this moment? The heart is where all the paradox and polarity can meet. The heart can hold it all. And it's also the seat of the soul. So that's where your true wisdom is. That's where your compass actually lives, the compass that will navigate you as a soul and as a being that has potentially had many other lifetimes. And so you have a purpose that is woven into your soul. And if you can come back to love and come back to your heart, then you will find that purpose.
Just do it.
Just do it. She's like, be succinct and simple.
No, we don't do that here. It's also called ad lib with lib for a reason. I'm like, we're here, we're there, we're this, we're that. And thank you for being one of my first guests. My other guest was like family. She's my sister. So this feels just right.
You're so much fun to be podcast hosted by and to talk
Oh my
to.
God, thank
Literally,
you.
I love it. I could have like carried on for another hour if I had a pee break.
So cool that you guided me to find my voice and my expression and just like get out of my own way. And this is part of me doing that. So it's really cool that we're like bringing it together.
So true. So
yeah.
True. I'm so proud. I'm so celebrating.
I am so excited for new people to discover you through this conversation. And yeah, can't wait to see you in person one day, to join you for a retreat. And yeah, where can everybody find you?
I have loved this as well. It's just been so fun talking to you. And I am available on my Instagram at kundalini.rose. My website also kundalinirose.co. And yeah, we also have tantrahuasca.com. So these are probably the best ways to explore my work and to reach me. And yeah, it's been such a joy. I'm so celebrating this podcast and everything that you've birthed, and I hope that we meet soon.
Yes, love you. Thank you again.
See you, babe. Mwah.